There we are.
So T. Rowles, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
Good.
Hello, Mike Bow. So what's going on? You've been teaching today?
No, took the day off.
Mike, it's a great honor to have you as my first guest. We're going to crush some interviews this month, kind of leading up to our Ultimate Golf Lesson seminar. So hopefully you're going to be a good lead-off hitter. People realize what a baseball maniac you are, by the way?
Yes.
What was your position when you played?
I was a shortstop, second baseman, just like my son, but
Oh,
nowhere near.
So, we got this coach education coming up in February. Obviously, normally you do it at the PGA show, but obviously, the situation that it is right now, no PGA show. So we're going online. So it's been a very high-tech year for you, Mike. You started your Instagram channel, and if anyone wants some Instagram, Venmo, I'm going to invest in all of the ones that you're doing, because if you're doing it, then everyone's doing it. So people need to follow your Instagram, Mike Adams Golf, because there's just some priceless tips that are the product of 600 years of golf instruction. So tell us what the coaches can expect to learn in the winter workshop.
Well, basically, those of us who teach for a living should never quit learning. We're never as good as we're going to be, and as long as we keep searching for the truth and digging deeper, we're going to get smarter and become better. And that's basically what we're going to be doing, is we're going to train them how to be better. It's a continuation from the first one we did, and it's going to be fabulous. We've got some great guests.
Yeah, we have. I played with a guy the other day. He was a president of a golf club, and he was a little bit confused by industry. He says, "Well, how do teachers really learn? How do I know if the teachers that I'm getting are any good?" So, I mean, you've been in the business a long time, and many of your assistants have gone on to have great careers. So how do you think teachers learn to be better teachers?
Well, I think that first of all, they need to find a mentor and listen to what the mentor has to say, follow them around, observe, learn from that. I think you also video yourself teaching, so you can see how you're communicating. And there's nothing better than taking any kind of lesson. Learn how to play guitar, learn how to do anything. So you put yourself in the student's role, so you see exactly what the student is going through.
Yeah, that's a really good one. We just lost you for a second, but I think basically what you just said was keep learning it, keep understanding how to be a beginner, right?
You there?
Yeah. You're hold on.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I said is, if you take a lesson in anything, you're going to put yourself in the student's shoes, start to learn the difficulty that they go through. You
I'm
there?
losing you a little bit. I'm there. I'm here. I haven't moved.
They'll see
So
you.
yeah. So the interesting thing about golf instruction is there's so many facets, right? And especially these days with all the different pieces of technology making us have to think deeper in different levels. How's that changed over the course of your career in terms of continuing to have to almost like, branch out and learn different things about, maybe anatomy or, physics and things like this?
Well, basically, what the technology has done, it's a better set of eyes. It's allowed us to measure instead of guess. Video was the first thing. Being able to see what's happening instead of and showing it to the student, so they now had a visual image of what was happening. And then we moved on to 3D, which allowed us to actually see what's happening with every student. And then we moved to TrackMan and other. I mean, I had what's called a golf tech and a sports tech, which were basically the forerunners to TrackMan and FlightScope and the Quad. And then when they came into being, those became outdated, and I brought the the TrackMan in, and I have now a TrackMan, a Quad, and a FlightScope. All are wonderful instruments, and the 3D force plates, unbelievable. No longer are we guessing what's happening with the ground. In fact, what I've learned the last 7 years from utilizing them is I really didn't understand the ground nearly as much as I thought I did. I was just as much in the dark as everybody else. And I've learned so much, it's unbelievable. And, that's where power comes from, using the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously you and I talk about this a lot. I mean, we've worked with a lot of different people, probably over the last, 5 or 6 years, specifically for reaction forces. Right? And so, looking at things like, timing, sequence timing, magnitude, and doing different things to
Right.
enhance each of those pieces, right? What do you think about, there's some pretty notable teachers out there that say, force plates are basically a waste of time. I think I know the answer. If I say to you, maybe not a launch monitor, but if there was a single piece of technology that you've used over the last 5 years that changed your teaching, it would probably be force plates, right? So.
Correct. The reason they say that is because they've never used them, or they don't know how to use them. They don't understand them. Understanding how to utilize force plates and exactly what the information you're going to derive from utilize them is a key to making people better. Changing the sequence, changing the timing of peak force, changing the magnitude for each one is unbelievable. And that's why we measure them beforehand to understand what should happen in what sequence. And when we go ahead and utilize force plates to give us the information so that we can match them up.
What would you say, let's go through each of those pieces. What's the biggest influence on timing?
Biggest influence on timing is the stance, understanding how wide it is, how much foot flare, also the application. The right-hand grip has a huge bearing. I mean, those of us who are grip the club more on top are always going to be pushing down. Or pushing down, the legs want to push back up. Or if you're side on, you want to push forward, so the legs want to open up. Or if you're under, where you're tucking and going in this position, the legs want to move lateral. So the grip has a huge influence on how we use the ground. The sequence of how we set our feet and square, closed, or open, flared or not flared, width and narrowness, all affect how we use the ground also.
All right, I was kind of fishing for the short answer, which was post, right? So people are predisposed,
Well,
so the reason we test them in order to know how to make sense of the ground forces is in order to test, to find out what we expect to see, right? And then so what we see with someone like a Bryson DeChambeau on a force plate is that his pressure shifts back to the front foot very early. He's a front post golfer, and about club parallel to the ground on the backswing, he's already starting to translate his pressure more towards the front foot or to the front side. And then you get guys, like Gary Woodland who are going to translate later, right? So the post test has a huge bearing on how we kind of shape our approach, from that moment on.
Correct. That's why we utilize it, to understand how the lower body works for each person, which also helps in the magnitude. Because a front post
Right.
uses very little horizontal force, but uses a ton of vertical force. Where a rear post golfer is going to use a ton more horizontal and then some torque, but not a ton of vertical. Where a center post is going to be more torque and then some vertical, but not as much horizontal force. So
I think Matt Rudy has a nice way of describing it, right? You've got these three dials that potentially we have to turn, one up or two up I think, the initial approach from, force play education was to say, okay, or probably the way that people look at it is to increase all of the forces, but you're the cook in the kitchen, dialing in the ingredients, right, Mike? Depending on the different variables. You want to talk about how?
Well, back to that.
Yeah.
Let's just say that you have a front post golfer, and you're trying to increase his lateral. That is not going to make him hit it farther. That's just. Or if you're a rear post golfer, you're trying to increase his verticals. That doesn't help him either. He needs to be more in a lateral, understanding which post utilizes which forces the most.
I think then the trail arm action is very important, right? So what we both talk about a lot is the intention of the golfer to hit it straight, and that could be up regulating the golf swing or down regulating, right? So if somebody has let's say an overly strong grip, and the face is, all things being equal, the face closes too early, then they're probably going to increase some, horizontal force, some sliding action to delay when that trail arm straightens, and so that's down regulation, right? But we can also up regulate and say, okay, now I need to, increase my club head speed, so I need to extend my arm, but you can also then, increase the lower body action that matches up to that. Our buddy Billy calls it offense and defense. So you want to talk about how you take away the defense and build up the offense in the course of a lesson.
Well, we watch a lot of people, first of all, who start with a backswing. They always want you to swing the club back slowly. I mean, swung it in a circle slowly, it would wobble and not work in a circular motion. But if you speed it up, it gets in its orbit, and you can change directions with it. Well, that's the first thing. Also, how to not only do you want to increase, you want to increase how you create the force and when you create the force. That's huge. I mean, a lot of people, if the ground reaction forces are happening out of sequence or happening too early or too late, it affects the distance the ball is hit. So our job in regulating is, number one, working it at a rate that they can sustain it. Then we work in a sequence that allows them to benefit from it, and then we put it in a force window so that they can go ahead and utilize all the forces at the right time. The timing of it happens, and then we amp up the magnitude of it.
So I think Sasha McKenzie and Michael Jacobs have been very influential in terms of talking about how the force is applied at the handle. But what we're saying is, yes, it's applied at the handle, but it's also applied at the ground, and those two things are a loop that are assisting each other to your point.
Correct.
So let's talk about how that then is relating into kind of the modern game, Mike. You're looking at Bryson with his ball speed, over 200 miles an hour now. I talked to Rory the other day. He was at 195. He's probably going to be approaching 200 reasonably soon. So where is it going to go? What are your juniors doing?
Well, I have a couple of juniors that are 195, 196. In fact, I have a guy who just graduated from college with 134 mile an hour club head speed and 203 mile an hour ball speed, and he's about 5'8". And so getting him to utilize the ground better made him hit it farther, much farther, because he was 118 when we started. I think that the equipment allows them to utilize, hit the ball farther. But learning how to utilize their body correctly is going to allow them to utilize that equipment to hit it farther.
Right. That's well said. So yeah, I mean, Bryson kind of broke the mold with his win at the U.S. Open, right? So it's going to be interesting how that all, who's going to get worse and who's going to get better, because as we're saying, there's a system of systems that is either complementing itself, as in the plane, the translations, the way that the trail arm action is working, all those things should complement each other. But there's a lot of people out there with just a piece of the puzzle, right? So they're trying to, like you said, swing back faster. They're trying to get their hands higher. you know, but they're not necessarily linking it all together to, you know, to actually get a consistent outcome. So this is where the system comes in really well. We're getting a few questions. I'm going to have Rudy on later in the week, so save the when is the book coming out questions for that one. So is it possible to be rear post with a driver and center post with an iron? You know, that's actually a really good question to discuss, because the rear post is really a test, right? So, I mean, somebody's hitting a chip shot with a very low cadence. You know, all of the things that happen are smaller. But we do, I mean, we would even see, you know, a rear post golfer potentially have a very small translation in chipping. So yeah, I think the translation quantity is different between a driver and an iron. Obviously, the total force can be different. But, you know, so being a rear post golfer just is what you were tested as. It doesn't mean you obviously have to move off the ball 3 inches for every shot. So,
Correct.
Mike, the importance of foot flare. Nobody in the world uses foot flare as precisely as you do and as efficiently as you do. So you want to talk about what makes us kind of flare the right foot, left foot when you use it?
Let's start with the rear foot, okay? Flare in the right foot flare allows us to create more turn in the backswing and maintain right leg flex, okay? Which is great if you're center or rear post. But if you're front post golfer, by squaring the right foot up, it will also make the right leg straighten and lock up and force you to stay more center to left. And so it allows you to utilize your natural post. The right foot flare also works in the downswing. The more flare the right foot is, the longer the right foot stays on the ground, so we can be pushing harder with it. The square the right foot is, the faster you come off that right foot. Now the left foot is vital. Left foot determines release, determines when it works as a braking action for the torque, and also works as an incentive for the verticals. The more the left foot flares out, the longer we rotate through, and the later the verticals happen, and the later the club releases. Throwing the left foot up, the left leg walks sooner, so the arms wrap and release sooner. So you can change release patterns, shot shape, and how they use the ground just by changing foot flare. Orientation also is huge. Opening the stance up shifts the plane to the left. Closing the stance shifts the plane to the right. Example, somebody who is an on-top or side cover golfer who wants to swing down and more to the left, by closing the stance, it encourages the club to move down the line and hit more level, and by closing it more, it shifts the plane to the right and gets them hitting more up on it, getting the club face to close. So you have a closed club face relative to the path, so you hit high draws. You look at Roy's. Another one would be, you know, Patrick Reed. But you look at the guys like who are more under, like John Wall, Lee Trevino, or you know, DJ, and also JB Holmes. They grip the club more under, but they open up. By opening up, it shifts the plane to the left, so it gets, even though they're still swinging to the right of their feet, they're swinging to the left of the target line, and left leg walks up much later, so the face stays square to the target, open to the path, and hits spades. So, you know, simply changing foot flare, changing foot orientation, you can change the trajectory, when the release happens, and basically the shape of the shot.
That's pretty good, Mike. So a big question we ask is, why do we swing like we do? You know, a lot of people on Instagram, I think one of the hot statements is matchups. There's nobody on this planet that's better at matchups than you. So it's possible to have a matchup, right, in terms of having a strong grip potentially, and, you know, opening up more and sliding more, but that potentially is not the right matchup for that person. So I think what we've got in the system is not only the matchups, which, as I said before, could be offense or defense, but we've also got the the system in place to understand which matchups to do. So there's a bunch of people who who haven't done testing with us before. You want to just talk about a quick overview of the tests and how that potentially changes the way you approach things.
Okay, when I measure wingspan, it gives me an idea of the how the backswing is going to go. Longer arms want to go more upright, so the shoulders turn flatter. Anytime the club has to swing more upright, we know that it's going to need some sort of shifting action for the plane. It has to have something to shallow it. If they are shorter arms, they're going to have more knee flex. So anytime you start with more knee flex, you're going to have more verticals to come through the golf ball. Forearm length. We measure forearm length to upper arm length. If the forearm is longer, when the right arm, it'll be higher at the top, so it will start down steeper, once again requiring more shifting motion to lower the plane. If the forearm is shorter, it's going to be lower, so it's going to start down from the lower position. And if the forearm is the same length, it's going to come more down in the
Oh, I lost Mike. Yeah, I am getting him back. He is coming back.
Allows us to understand. Oh, did you lose me?
Yeah, we lost you for a second. hold that breath.
Okay.
That might be an important piece of discussion. Where were you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you lose me?
Right after you're talking about the length of the forearm and the height of the swing.
Okay. The length of the forearm is going to tell you where you're going to be at the top, which is going to tell you where it's going to start to come down. If it's longer than if the forearm is longer than the upper arm, it's always going to be more upright. So the club's going to come down from a steeper place. If the forearm is shorter than the upper arm, it's going to come down from a lower place. And if it's the same, it's going to come down more in the torso or right arm plane. The right arm test. When we swing it back, the right arm test is going to give us how the grip works. The right hand grip tells us how. It's also going to give this initial takeaway example, like an on-top golfer or a side cover golfer. It's always going to take the club back on a hinge. It's going to take it more to the outside and steeper. Where an under golfer is going to take it back more to the inside and more open. So this is going to be more open. Where side cover on top is going to be more shut. Side on is going to go more in the torso or right arm plane. What else it does give us is not only the hinge type, but the backswing plane. It gives us angle attack. The angle attack from the right hand, the more on top I am, the steeper my angle attack is going to be. The more under I am, the shallower my angle attack is going to be. Where in between is going to be more neutral. The linkage, which is where the right elbow is relative to the right hip. The more under I am, the farther forward my right elbow is going to be, creating more side bend and more lateral action in the lower body. The more on top my right hand is, the more the right elbow is going to be behind my hip, the more I'm going to be pushing down, and the more vertical I'm going to be utilizing. So it affects shaft lean. It affects what happens through impact, the release type. The more under I am, the more that it's going to release out to the right. The more on top I am, it's going to release down and to the left. So basically, how important is your trail arm? It's vital.
Yeah.
We did checks the external shoulder rotation. That tells us, I mean, you can be a under golfer with very little external shoulder rotation, but the club will not shallow on as much in the downswing. So you're going to have to close their stance to help them to shallow. You can be on top or side cover golfer, much like Matthew Wolff or Rory McIlroy, and with our Sergio. You have a ton of external shoulder rotation. Well, that will tend to shallow the club sooner on the downswing. We check post. Post is vital to understand how the body's going to move in the backswing. I mean, think of this, okay? Front means you're going to be pivoting around the front leg in the backswing. Rear means you're going to shift to the right, pivot around the rear leg, and move back to the left. Center means you're going to stay more centered, more around the pelvis, and shift to the left. Okay, those are all great. But what happens is the upper body can affect what happens with the lower body. If I am a front post golfer and I'm more under, it's going to want to shift me more to the right. So instead of doing that, we're going to still pivot front. But what it's going to allow me to do is I'm going to use what is called a counter swivel to help me deliver it on my natural plane. Where if I'm swing the club more upright, it wants to throw me front. But if I'm a rear post golfer and I'm more upright, you're going to see guys like Vijay Singh and Monty create what we call a counter tilt, which helps them and lower the plane. We test what the hips are at impact because we want to do that for the simple reason is we want to understand what the left hand grip needs to be, because what the hips are at impact tells us. We have a device called a grip analyzer, and it tests the left hand grip, so it allows us to dial the grip in. Once we get the right hand grip, we can have them swing the club with the right hand only to dial the right hand grip in. Everything we're doing is we're trying to dial in all of the everything that matters. And we do
the interesting thing is that you know, that as a list sounds pretty intimidating, and you know, for the crew that is saying keep it simple, golf just isn't that complicated. What they don't realize is that most people do most things correctly for their style. I mean, especially, you know, as they become more proficient at golf. So for example, a tour player, we have all of those formulas in our head, all those algorithms, and we'll select one or two things that then unlock, you know, their golf swing, right? Whereas, you know, if you have preferences, which is kind of my next point, is, you know, probably the detriment of our industry. So you were just talking about how, you know, a stronger grip is going to lead to a little bit more, you know, translation of the head, potentially a little bit flatter shoulder plane, versus somebody who was a rear post with a weaker trail hand grip is going to have, you know, like you called it, counter tilt. So the head is going to stay very centered despite the fact that the pelvis is moving to the right. It's also affecting kind of, so the head position, you know, has been over the last, you know, 20 years very important for a lot of people staying centered, right? But it's not good for everybody. If a person who's a stronger grip stays more centered, they're going to end up hitting low pulls. So it contributes to the matchups in terms of, you know, the grip relationship to the head gives us a face angle, and then the contribution of all the smaller pieces also gives us the matchups that enable that person to hit straight. Also swing shape, right, Mike? So you talk about preferences, you know, the video age you lived through, we're still in it. You know, how, you know, the railway lines and how, you know, potentially the grip and, you know, the net effect of our aim, right? So some people have to aim left or right, depending on their arm length, you know, their grip and stuff like that. So talk a little bit about how, you know, the video potentially is detrimental in terms of people having preferences and not allowing their body to move naturally in its most effective form.
Well, I think it's only detrimental if you're stuck in a system that is in a box. It's locked into one size fits all. It can be video can be great for you if you understand how the differences from the measurements. I mean, video can be a great tool or a bad tool, just like TrackMan can be a great tool or a bad tool. Force plates can be a great tool or a bad tool. If you don't understand the applications of them, then you're going to give them information that doesn't fit them.
Right.
Example, I mean, we were talking about the different hinges and releases. I don't teach. I just teach grip, which allows the hinge to happen. Except for same for the release. As far as Somebody says, do you try to create more lateral motion? No, I widen their stance. If they wanted, how do you reduce lateral motion? I narrow their stance. Simply by application, we can change it. How do you get them swinging farther to the right or more up on it? Well, I'll close the stance.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get far left or more down on it? I'll open the stance. I mean, you and I talk about openers and closers and steepeners and shallowers. Jim Hardy did a great job talking about steepeners and shallowers, and you and I have taken it deeper to understand openers and closers, what causes what to happen, which if you tune into the Ultimate Golf Lesson, you're going to learn more about that.
And that's all matchups, right? That's just, you know, it's understanding, you know, I think what we share is a really good understanding of the D plane and what makes the ball do what it does. But then beyond that, we also understand how to adjust the golfer to create different, you know, club delivery and therefore ball flight, right? So for an example, somebody asked a question of, you know, I'm a side cover golfer, how do I hit it, you know, higher off the tee? So we understand that, you know, side cover golfer will tend to hit down on it more than average, and that they'll tend to have their swing direction more to the left. So how do we fix that?
Well, by closing the stance, it shifts the plane to the right, and it gets them hitting more up on it and swinging more in and out, so they hit it higher with a draw. Because closing the stance causes the left leg to lock up sooner. Closing the stance shifts the plane to the right. Closing the stance, in effect, moves the golf ball forward without moving the golf ball forward. Because one of the problems of moving the ball forward is it opens the shoulders up. Well, if you close the stance, it automatically moves the ball forward without opening the shoulders up, and allows you to get a deeper turn in the backswing and hit more up on it, which is what a side cover golfer does. I mean, Rory's figured it out.
Yeah.
You know, you see so many of the side cover golfers close up and hit shots.
Well, the interesting thing about Rory is, you know, we talk about how, you know, we can predict aim of the upper body and lower body based on their style.
Right.
But, you know, the industry gravitates towards, you know, railway lines. So Rory naturally, with his side cover grip and his desire to hit draws off the tee, tends to have his chest open to his feet. And so despite the fact that he, you know, has been quoted as saying that he's always trying to aim, you know, more left, which I think is probably, you know, the contribution to that, you know, external rotation of the trail shoulder. But despite that, you know, when he's under pressure and he's hitting bombs, he tends to aim down the right and
correct.
You know, on the driving range beforehand, he'll aim a little bit left. So it's kind of interesting how, you know, the players maybe, you know, talk about something, but, you know, when it comes to being successful under the gun, they revert to their natural style of doing things.
Well, look at Dustin Johnson. He went through a period in 2020 where he had squared up his stance and tried to neutralize his grip, and he started shooting 80. And all of a sudden, he went back and saw Butch, who strengthened his right hand again and opened his stance up, and all of a sudden, he beats everybody by a ton. You know, there are certain stances and certain grips and certain movements your body makes that are more beneficial for each student. It's not the same movement for everybody, but it's for each student. That's why you have to measure them. Because if you don't measure them, you don't know what is best for each person. Hunter Mahan was a front post golfer, one of the best players in the world. And when he started shifting to the right, all of a sudden he can't make money on the web.com. Yanni Singh was better than anybody. I mean, this girl won 18 times before she was 22 and 6 majors. Front post, 107 miles an hour, fastest on the ladies tour by a time. Now she swings 93, 94, and she's no longer front and she's no longer under. She looks better, but she can't make a cut.
Yeah.
Lydia Ko, I mean, she was shifted way to the right, good the way under, and just hit 93, 94 mile an hour club head speed. We had her on the force plates, and she was trying to work on staying centered. They fixed her right hand, and all of a sudden her club head speed was a meager 83 miles an hour, which would be a weak junior. And she's trying to beat the best players in the world. Everybody is predisposed to move in a certain pattern. We have to measure them to determine what that pattern should be and allow them to maximize. That's the whole purpose of the Ultimate Golf Lesson, is to teach you how to measure the student so you can help them maximize their talent and become the best player they can possibly be.
So I'm just going to answer a question. Somebody has a question about they're a side cover golfer, but their face is closed. I mean, there's two ways to answer that.
Face tie back, or is it close it in?
Well, that's going to be my question, right? So there's two things. There's two answers to that question. If it looks closed going back and at the top of the backswing, that's correct for a side cover golfer. It really isn't. So what does a side cover mean? It means that the grip, you know, the right hand grip and the face relationship, which is what a grip is, that we ended up learning from you know, Phil Cheatham's research. So they start with an open face to hand relationship, and you know, Mike. So there's different ways of kind of creating a grip, right? So we talk about the elbow, we talk about the hand, we talk about the face on the ground even. So why don't you talk about all the things that contribute to kind of the hand face relationship?
Okay, I'll use myself as an example. I was always a good, but my right hand was very much on top. And my father was a golf professional, and he hated the way that looked. So he was constantly moving my right hand to the right, and I constantly kept hitting the ball farther and farther to the left because my hand would come through this way. Well, so I started, I would grip it neutral like my father wanted, but the club face would be wide open. So in reality, I actually had the same grip I always had, and I drove the ball perfect, okay? Well, you and I were testing different players, and we happened upon Paul Casey. We met him, and he was very top. And I said, well, your right hand's very much on top. He said, yeah, but my teacher doesn't like that. He wants me neutral. So I fooled him by opening the club face up, which is exactly what I did. Well, good example was when you measured, you know, Luke Donald. Here's a guy that should be way under, but his grip was neutral and his club face was dead shut. He says, yeah, I play my best golf when I shut my face. Well, in essence, he was using side under or under grip.
So to answer, to answer that guy's question, basically, a lot of people, you know, when they try and change their grip, they really don't change the relationship with the face as well as they potentially could. They definitely need to understand that the elbow needs to move with the hand, right? So if I rotate my arm, which is partially from the shoulder and partially from the forearm, that has a profound effect on where the ball's going to fly. If I tuck my elbow in, I think you and I would agree that elbow trumps hand, you know,
every time,
right? So the elbow position has an unbelievable effect. So if anybody's listening, they haven't done any testing, then, you know, just go out on the range and turn your elbow out like Hogan, or tuck it in like, you know, DJ, and see what happens to your face. So face stability happens when you get the grip and arm position, you know, that suits your style. So a lot of the times, you know, a lot of the swing theories that have been present, you know, especially in the advent of launch monitors, you know, people trying to hit up on the ball reverse engineers their golf swing, right? So they end up being more of a under golfer, you know, with more side bend, and they lose control of their face. So somebody says, what is that why people regrip? I believe so. I think a lot of the regripping I've seen is somebody potentially had an unfashionably weak grip, you know, like Hogan or Rory McIlroy or Sam Snead. They're really unfashionable. And they've consistently taught to move the hand to a different place that doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't work. And, you know, so those kind of people will often be, you know, milking the club and moving their hand, you know, back to somewhere which is more functional. So I think that's why my experience of, I mean, take someone like Sergio, right? I mean, he had a, you know, very, very, you know, on top right hand. And I think possibly, who knows? I mean, we don't get inside of people's brains, but, you know, possibly he was, you know, trying to move away from that and it got uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, Sergio, you know, when we measured him, he was one of the most on top I've ever measured. Was, you know, he's got a shorter forearm, tons of external shoulder rotation, and very much on top. When everybody thinks he's got a ton of lag, in reality, what's happened, it's the external shoulder rotation and the shorter forearm, which drop the club underneath, and he's still on top of the shaft the whole way when he hits it. Beautiful golf striker of the ball. He does exactly what he do. We look at, they talk about Matthew Wolff, how he picks it up to the outside. Right? The same thing with Furyk. They both are on top golfers, and I measured Furyk and Wolff, and that just hinges the club up farther to the outside, takes it up, where Wolf has a ton of external shoulder rotation, as does Furyk, which drops it under. And Furyk's forearm to upper arm are the same length as is Wolf. And so they basically do exactly what they do. Their swings are perfect matches to what their biomechanics dictate they should do.
Yeah. So we're getting a few questions about what people are. You know, the easiest way to test yourself, you know, in my head, I don't necessarily look at grips as a binary, you know, jump. You're somewhere between, you know, here and here. And it's important to understand that your elbow and, you know, so your shoulder and forearm are contributing to that. You know, so if you put your hand out and turn your hand to an under, see how the elbow moves in front of your chest. If you turn it to be more of it on top, the elbow moves out. So those things have to match up. So I think what people can do is more experimentation on the range, which is basically what we do, you know, when we're young golfers, right? And not really have a bias, which is, you know, quite often a limitation for people. So go out and hit some with the arm more over, some with it more under, and find out, you know, which one works for you. There's golfers that, you know, I mean, vast majority of golfers, the PGA Tour players that we've tested, LPGA Tour players, match up to their style. There's a few, right, Mike, that are just slightly deviated from their style for a reason, right? And I'll give two that I've tested in. Martin Keimer is really a side-on golfer that grips it weaker and, you know, hits cuts all the time.
Because he left.
So I tested him. I said, hey, Martin, do you ever hook it? And he goes, ban in 1,000.
Well, that's the whole thing. Somebody who is a lefty playing right-handed, the right hand can then shift to the right, I mean, get stronger by one. So if you're a natural neutral side-on golfer, you can move it to more side-under position. And if you're a righty playing left-handed, same difference. But, you know, basically, all we're trying to do is match up and figure out. See, you and I had a goal. We wanted to make sure there was no such thing as an outlier. There had to be a way of finding everybody in the model. Well, the model is the person standing in front of you. Then you just simply measure them and you match everything up to make it all. That's the whole purpose of the Ultimate Golf Lesson. They will learn how to do this.
That's right. Who else have we got here? Okay, so somebody asked us where we're going with the research. So just to give people a background, you know, we're not just making this up, right? We want to learn, probably with a determination that at least matches everybody else, but I think exceeds. And so once we come up with some observations as teachers on the tee, we then go and look for people that, you know, can help us understand it better, right? So with the grip, for example, you know, for the first time in history with Phil Cheatham, we were able to measure a grip. A lot of people, you know, if they say grip, you know, everyone thinks they're talking about the same thing, but we're talking about the relationship between each individual hand and the club face, for example. So that was terrific because once we could measure the grip, we could then measure the effect of the grip. And so, you know, we've done a lot of presentations around how, you know, people's swings change according to the way they hold the club or adjust the club face. That can,
well, I remember
that,
the magic question you asked Phil. He said, well, I don't see that much change in what's happening with the body in the grip. And he said, well, did you check the right hand? He says, well,
yeah.
imagine, it's kind of, why don't you take it and explain what he said?
Well, so we were doing an event at Cool Clubs, and we wanted them to measure the grip. And, you know, so we went backwards and forwards and determined that basically, you know, the palm of the hand is, you know, plane, and that plane relative to the club face gives a relationship, and that relationship is a grip. And, you know, he went back, like most people in golf, and thought a grip was both hands combined, right? So he said, okay, so I averaged out the two hands, and I don't really see much of a predictable, you know, difference. And, you know, to even go back before that, he'd done a study on handle twist velocity, and that's what we were looking at, which is the rate of closure. And so, but he was able to separate the right hand, the left hand, and the combined, you know, relative to his you know, rate of closure information. And, found out that the right hand had a huge correlation. Left hand, historically has probably been valued more, but we obviously really believe in the trail arm, trail hand action. And the two hands together was, it was a complete scattergram. And so, we moved on from there and did a really cool presentation at the Top 100 conference with Sasho as well, where we were able to relate the strength of the trail hand to the rate of closure of, a database of 100 tour players, which is pretty cool. So, so then we moved, and I actually was super excited about what we do with Mike Duffy,
Yes.
and how he measured. So he had a nice database of people, with motion capture in conjunction with the force plate. And, so he was able to identify the timing and differences in terms of how each of the different posts is able to generate speed. So what's coming in the future is Mike is going to continue to talk about that and how, we have to create space for the type of force that we want to create. So if you want to come up, you got to go down. If you want to rotate, you have to, get deep with the right pelvis in the backswing, for example. If you want to have horizontal force, you've got to move to the right. And so, so it's becoming very logical. And the other piece we're looking at is, again, these are observations. They're things that work really well for us when we teach, but we're not accepting that when we're passing that on to, our fellow coaches. We're trying to make sure that we have really good information measured. And so we're trying to dial in from a measurement standpoint. I mean, we obviously see, the grip affecting the ground forces, but we're doing some studying now over this course of this month to try and measure, using data, how, the trail arm action, the ground reaction forces are working together, and some of the other effects of the trail arm. So, I mean, it's ongoing that Mike and I are talking to people in the background and trying to validate as best we can. And, to Mike's point, always trying to find gaps in our system whereby, there are no outliers, right, Mike? And
Exactly right.
It's pretty amazing how complete the system is. And, people start testing how they do small changes. Hey, Mike, I'm going to go on to the next question because one of the questions we get is when, Paul Whalen, when's the book coming out? That's a question we get a lot.
The book is done. The question is, when is it coming out? Is what we're going to ask Rudy after
45 minutes. So the question we get is, if I come to your education, is it the same as it was last year?
No.
I guarantee you nobody has changed the way they teach over the last 5 years more than you have, right? I mean, you've kept what works, and the amount of additions that you have in terms of, especially in terms of generating speed. I mean, there's nobody better in the world at matchups or generating speed as you. So you want to talk about, obviously we do go over the testing at every single education we do because people watch it and don't do it. If people start testing, some of the best teachers in the world have come to the education and become even better very quickly because they went away and tested every single person in front of them. But we have to cover testing. We have to cover the outcomes of testing. This particular session, we're going to talk about the lesson structure that you and I share, not consciously. We didn't choose to teach kind of in the same sequence, but it turns out by testing that we tend to have a structure to our lessons, which makes it very effective. So Mike, you want to talk about kind of the sequence that you tend to teach people in?
Well, I mean, basically, I measure everybody first. I start with wingspan, forearm, and then the right arm and external shoulder rotation. I do upper body stuff first, and then I'll move to post and on from there. I try to get them to what it's supposed to do, and then I add the lower body to it, and as the lower body starting to hit, I start to magnify the force. Is once I get it in the right sequence, I get the peak force windows happening at the right time, and then I start to increase the magnitude just to get them to hit it farther. I mean, the whole reason we utilize the biomechanics, and we've been fortunate enough to utilize 6 different ones. And each one has contributed something to our knowledge and verified what we were looking at, or actually added a term
Change
to
course. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that is because we are, none of us are perfect, and we're always learning and always evolving, and that's the goal. And that's why we keep researching, because we want all the answers answered.
So I think, having a formal system or structure to the lesson is very important, because if you watch, us teach, once you match someone up, we know when to stop teaching, right? I mean, it's like, okay, it might not look average, so Jim Furyk doesn't look average, but what do we do then? So we get people to go on the golf course and hit shots, right? So if people follow your Instagram, most of the videos, as far as I remember, are you teaching people how to accommodate lies, you teach them how to hit fades, draws, highs, so if you ever listen, I mean, I've learned as much in my career from tour players as I have from, other teachers, because they have to obviously get it done. And one of the lessons, especially if you listen to Tiger Woods and you know what you're talking, what you're listening for, is he's always talking about shots. He's always working on shots. I mean, he's right there on the range with you at Medalist. How does he work on his stuff?
Well, he always works the nine ball flights. He's always working on different shots. He never tries to hit one stock full shot. He'll hit some full drivers. He's always trying to maneuver the golf ball and hit at a distance. He always has a target. He always has something in mind. Always practices off the worst lies. The reason is because if you practice off of bad lies and you get used to hitting it, when you encounter those on the golf course, you don't panic. And the good lies, or even the average lies, look like the ball's teed up, and it's easier to hit them. But I mean, the way he practices is different than everybody else. And and the reason JT has gotten a lot better, and DJ has gotten a lot better, and Rory has gotten a lot better, and Kupka, whether they admit it or not, they practice next to him, and they start to incorporate what he does and help themselves become much, much better.
So, so what's the future of golf instruction, Mike?
Future golf instruction is to measure every student, utilize the technology to verify what's happening, so that you can see, and because you want to use the best sets of eyes, and then once you get them hitting it the way you want them, get them on the golf course and teach them how to play the game, because the golf is played on the golf course, and the more time we can spend on the golf course teaching and training them, the better we can make the people play better golf.
I'm excited to have my buddy Stuart Morgan on. He's got some really cool insights in terms of how to take it to the course. So Ultimate Golf Lesson Winter Workshop, Mike, it's going to be in early February, 8-9 February and 15-16. www.ultimategolflesson.com. We've got a lot of our friends. We're going to talk about how to use technology, how to do the testing, how to be better coaches, how to take it to the course. So it's going to be pretty cool. Charles Werner, hi buddy. Charles was an unbelievable player at USC, Mike. Wearable tech for on-course feedback. That's a good one. I think there's going to be, I'm working with a couple of companies, and there's going to be some stuff for the phone and some stuff for the club, which is really going to change things a lot. So stay posted in the next 6 months. There's going to be some really cool stuff coming around. Mike, anything else you want to say? Mike Adams Golf is your Instagram, which is probably, in my opinion, it's the best golf follow on Instagram. Yes. All those hours you spent doing it. You've got to thank Keelan in the background there. So Keelan has been shadowing you here for a year, and his teaching is, I don't know if he's got a great face for radio. Hey buddy, we all thank you for your work with getting it up there as well, Keelan, and give us a synopsis of how so if you could have said this time last year, this is how I think my teaching is going to be in 1 year, versus having spent the year with Mike, how do you think, expectation versus reality was, number one, and then what would you recommend people do to get better at teaching based on your experience this year?
So if we go back a year, I came over from Ireland in June 2019 after finishing my PGA. I was just kind of excited to get out here, the industry, but I hadn't really any definite goals. I know I wanted to be a coach, but to be honest, I didn't know what route that was going to take me down. And then just by chance, I ended up at the same club that Mike was working at, and Mike took me under his wing, and I've listened to everything he's done. I've stopped guessing. I remember one day he sent me over to a student on the range, and I was a bit nervous. I was chatting to him and this and the other, and he stopped his lesson 2 minutes in. He's like, "Caleb, aren't you measuring?"
Mike is, Mike's not only teaching the person in front of him, he knows what everyone else is teaching whilst he's teaching.
2 eyes and 2 ears, I think. But no, yeah, Mike's been a godsend for me. He's changed my whole life. He's changed my whole career. I've took every bit of advice he's given me. I've worked hard at the Ultimate Golf Lesson and hanging out with yourself and Mike as much as I can. Obviously, I'm down here beside him in Florida, I'm very grateful for Mike and Mike having me here and being able to do what I do. So my career looks a lot better right now than it did 12 months ago. Sure.
Yeah, just keep posting those good stuff. It'll stay that way. Yeah. What's that, Mike?
Thanks, Steve.
I said he's actually making people better.
He is. He's doing a great job. And
kicking balls to them and saying, that looks good, that looks good. With an Irish accent.
Yeah, and they don't understand it even. So, historically, people kind of have to come and work for you to have an apprenticeship, right? But we've kind of distilled all that down into our webinar. So I hope we'll get a bunch of people sign up. And thanks everyone for your questions. Servus, Thomas, nice to see you. Mike Bow, gonna grill me. You haven't got enough questions for all my answers. So I don't think the webinar is gonna be long enough for you. So yeah, it takes it takes a week to simplify what you just said. Congratulations, Renee. She just got a new job at the Bears, which is pretty unbelievable. Shena, hey, Daniel Beck's online there. Mike,
good.
Best teacher in Sweden. Thanks everybody. Yeah, so it's interesting. We have great great teachers that come through the system. This is not they have every right to stick to what they're doing because they're successful. I think someone like Andrew Park. When they learn the system, it makes it incredible. Hey, Nicholas, how you doing? Larry, thank you. Carol, there's some great teachers on here. Joe Plecker, wow. I played with your buddy the other day, Joe, from Baltimore. Who else have we got? At medalist, in fact, Mike. So there's a few balls amongst the alligators there now. They're delayers though, not mine. Hey, thanks, Pierre. Yeah, so I think, Mike, what is this? This is like, where are we? First half of January. Maybe we'll do this. Doug Spencer, one of the best teachers of our system in the world. He does unbelievable work down there in North Carolina, teaches a lot of juniors. People don't even realize how many juniors you teach, Mike. How many percentage, what's the percentage of juniors that you teach versus regular Joes?
35%.
Yeah, and you do, unbelievable job. Sharpie, servus. Yeah, so Sharpie is working at the club I used to work at and fixing the things that I messed up probably. Coach Chris Taylor had a question. Can you ask it again? I forgot what it was. I think it was something along the lines of how do we decide what to match up? So we're always going for offense, right, Mike? We're trying to increase speed. We're trying to make people less prone to injury. So given the opportunity, we're trying to match them up, not only in terms of like Instagram matchups, but in terms of matchups to their personal style. So we're matching them up to themselves, and then we're matching them up to the outcomes. Do you have a 5 minutes warm up? So Nicholas Brassa asked, do we have a 5 minutes warm up? Even tour players, the game can change your swing, right? So if you go and play in the Open, or you play a course where you have to hit it really high, the greens are firm, whatever, you potentially can adapt your swing for a week. So a lot of the tour players I've worked with, I'll have them do the Goldilocks approach on the Monday, whereby they weaken the grip a little bit, hit some shots, strengthen their grip a little bit, hit some shots, so they can find their sweet spot again, whereby they don't have to, solve their swing during the swing. So we're trying to, unrestrict their swing and trying to have them have a stable face without, too much effort. Coach Chris Taylor, when is UGL? It's early February, and you sign up online. One or all? I got no idea.
There was
is this the Three Musketeers?
There was a question from Errol Bayouk, who's a good friend of mine from Turkey.
I missed it. I do have I have an answer for Galeva. Yeah, he's an undercover golfer, Steve. Paul Whalen's asking about, speed sticks and things like that. If you come and watch us teach, Paul, which we'd highly love you to do, always welcome once this craziness goes away. We can unlock a lot of speed through technique and education, and not effort, right? So if somebody has a mismatched grip and they swing speed sticks, they're going to down regulate their swing in order to hit the ball straight. The function of the game is obviously to hit it as far as you can, find your golf ball, not lose it. And so what happens is that you can do speed sticks, all day, or probably not fast, you get injured, but as soon as you go to the golf course, you'll down regulate to the point where your determination to get the ball in play will restrict your motion to what you need to do. And that, for a lot of people, that's a really ugly kind of feeling in golf. So what we're trying to do is, unrestrict the golf swing. So once you got someone unrestricted, we get them using the ground better, which, what's the average speed gain you get with somebody in their first lesson, Mike?
It depends. 6 to 20 miles an hour. I never seen anybody less.
We, what people don't realize, we teach a lot of teachers, right? And so we go to all over the world, or we did, and, we teach teachers, and we see golf teachers get 20 miles an hour in 10 minutes. So so what you're saying, with the speed stick or things like that is, I've done everything I can in order to increase speed. The only thing I've got left is to increase my physical capacity. So then I think Ben Shear is on here. We have a lot of friends who are trainers. Then you need to go to the trainer and try and get it out of the system. So the short term is we fix the matchups, create offense, not defense. Long term, you need to continue to refine because, Mike, when I was talking to Rory, it was really cool. He said, I could always get to 190, but I didn't own it, right? And so, so he needs to keep it. And so we give a lesson and people gain, 10, 15 miles an hour sometimes. And, they'll leave and it'll lose it. And so, I think Chris Comer said you were sprinkling magic dust. But the reality is we can guide someone to do the things they need to do, but the chances of remembering every single piece of it is not there. So, but that doesn't mean that we change what we do. We use kind of a mastery approach. So they just make them better at those specific changes. And then longer term, of course, improving the function of your body, within the body, there are things that downregulate you, potentially pain or imbalances and what have you. So, continuing to improve your body is something that needs to happen in the background, making sure you don't get injured because that's a big deal. So that's it, Mike. I've had you for an hour, which has flown by. I hope everyone benefited that. Cole77, when we come to South Africa? Mike, have you ever been to South Africa?
I have not been to South Africa ever.
It's so good. Cape Town is one of the great cities. You know what they've got there, Mike?
What?
Vineyards. Hey, we should have like a voting function on here. Mike and I are talking about doing a podcast, and it's going to be drink a bottle of wine, discuss the wine, and talk about golf at the same time. So, Coles, we need to come down to Cape Town because we want to go to the vineyards and have some, what do they have down there? Pinotage, I think. It's some Switzerland. Always love Switzerland. I love going to Cron. They have vineyards there as well, Mike. So cheese and wine in Switzerland is fun. Canada, we're going to go. I think we're going to go up to Vancouver at some point when we got an invitation to go up there when this craziness is gone. Pinotage, I love it. It's good. So that's it, Mike. Stellenbosch is awesome. I agree, Tiger. Okay, perfect. All right, guys. Mike, you got any final words? How do people become great golf coaches? Say it again.
Well, first, watch the Ultimate Golf Lesson, because it's going to go through everything. Observe the best teachers in the area. Listen, watch, and observe. The problem with people, when they watch people teach, they're grading that person instead of trying to figure out why are they so good and start doing what they're doing. Second thing is take a lesson yourself to see, put yourself in the student's situation so you understand where the student's coming from. And then the third thing is to watch the Ultimate Golf Lesson so you learn how to and quit guessing and start giving out good information. Utilize the tools available to you. Utilize TrackMan. Utilize force plates. Utilize video. Utilize what's available to you to make you the best teacher.
Hey, Coles, all the spots are not taken. There are spots available. The early bird discount spots went quickly, but the full price is still available. You know, my opinion on the learning part is, you know, we're more and more becoming specialists. I would say it's very important that the players can, or the teachers can understand, you know, what we're asking the body to do. So, you know, people are, you know, asking for speed and they're using a speed stick, which, you know, that doesn't, you know, why does it work? What does it change? You know, so understanding anatomy, I think, is something that changed my teaching career. It made me able to use motion capture and understand some of those things. You know, becoming an absolute master of ball flight, you know, you can't shortchange it, because if you understand motion and you understand ball flight, then you can start relating those two things together and make really quick changes. Understanding learning, right? I mean, that's where Fletcher, it's ultimategolflesson.com. Understanding how people learn, right? I mean, that's kind of the next piece. So people are becoming more and more specialized. I think the future of golf instruction is very specialized. So you have to choose a path and really, you know, if you want to be great, you've got to understand everything you can about it, because, you know, when we talk to tour players, they're watching YouTube just the same as, or Instagram just the same as the teachers are. So if you want to get ahead of them, you have to understand stuff potentially outside of golf, which is really important. We're definitely coming to Australia, John Wright. We love it. Good wine.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to cut it off here.
Right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike, especially. Thanks, Keelan.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.